how does it fit in with the motility section? I think the main thing you think about, and Andrew talked about quite a bit, is the importance of communication. And I think this is what social media does. And hopefully in the next 10, 15 minutes, I can convince you why this is important for gastroenterologists, both as an academic gastroenterologist and also as a gastroenterologist in communicating with your patients. So, a little bit about social media. A lot of people will say, well, I don't really use social media. You probably are already using it. In addition to the common one like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, there are a whole bunch of other apps that you're probably already using that's actually also part of social media. And looking at some current trend in some of the studies based on worldwide population, most people, when they use a mobile device, almost 50% of the time actually spend on using social media apps. So people actually spend a lot of time with these. And also, when you look at the trend over the years, there's been an increasing use in all forms of social media by the general population over time. The most common you see is YouTube, Facebook are the most common ones people use. The one that a lot of medical professionals use, like Twitter, LinkedIn, are actually somewhere in the middle. And this is important because when we think about using social media in a healthcare setting, depending on what our target is, we need to think about which form of social media platform we use. The user demographic is important because different populations use different social media apps as well. As you can see here, a high percentage of the younger population use things like Instagram, where the older population tend to have a higher percentage that use things like Facebook. So if we want to target different population, we might have to go on different platforms to make sure that we're sending the right message. The other thing is you look at, there are other social economical background that might be important as well. For example, if you look at the population who use LinkedIn, they tend to be people that have more education, maybe have a higher annual income. So those are more likely to be sort of the professional population that you're targeting. So your messaging may be also a little bit different depending on the app that you're using. And using social media for professional purposes is actually becoming more popular, especially in the younger population. More and more people are using this in the professional setting for their work. So that's why, as healthcare providers, it's also important for us to start adopting this as well. So the question is when we use social media, how do we use professional use of social media in medicine? Well, there are actually a few things we try to accomplish, right? One of them is actually acquiring information, trying to learn something from everyone. The other is actually distribute information and amplify your message, whether it's your research, healthcare, or other educational messages. And finally, important thing is to network, networking with your colleagues from around the world. People like our moderators today, Andrew, a lot of them I actually met through social media before I met them in person. So, and when we were to start, the first thing we want to ask is, what are your goals of using social media? And there are actually a few things you're trying to accomplish, right? Education, outreach, and making connection. For example, for outreach, you maybe think about promoting an event, promoting your service, promoting your work achievement. You have to think about you promoting them to the public or patient or to other professionals. For education, maybe disseminating medical information or research, maybe to trainees, to other healthcare professionals, or to the public. And also making connection with other organizations, other people that have the same interests as you are also very important as well. And what is the impact of this? Is there evidence behind any of this? Well, first of all, for outreach, this is a study that we published a few years ago now, and this is concerning using social media by an institution and ranking. We all love rankings, right? And the US News and World Report in the US actually published a hospital ranking every year by specialty. We actually looked at the use of social media by the institution and how that correlate with change in ranking by US News and World Report. And what we found was that there's actually an independent correlation between the number of followers by the institution Twitter account with the US News and World Report ranking and reputation score. So basically, the more follower that institution has, the higher their ranking generally. And when we look at the change over 2 years, we found that the institutions that gain more followers on Twitter during that time frame are the more likely the one that will improve their ranking versus the one that actually don't gain as many followers. So there seems to be an independent correlation between social media following and social media activity by an institution and their ranking. And this might be important, especially for hospital administration, right? If you want to promote your hospital, promote your service, this might actually be one way to do it. Education is also important. This is a study where actually surveyed GI fellowship program directors in the US over 2 years. And we want to see how the perception of social media changed among program directors. And what we found that during that time frame, there was a significant increase in proportion of program director who say that their trainees should be encouraged and trained in using social media, and that social media should be considered a useful and meaningful source of medical information for fellows. And importantly, actually significantly more of them actually are saying that they would use information obtained from social media when they're looking at applicants for their fellowship program as well. So I think people are actually aware of social media activity by healthcare professionals. What about research? We talked about academic GI. What about using research and amplifying your research? This is a study that we published, I think, 2 years ago now. We look at social media activity by journals and the citation of articles that are published by the journal. We look at the 5 major GI journals, and we look at whether or not an article is being promoted on social media, and a 3-year citation of those articles compared to the ones that are not promoted on social media. And what we found was that the ones that were promoted on Twitter tend to have higher citations over 3 years. And specifically, when we look at the type of papers that were being promoted, it seems like the motility and DGBI papers are more likely to be promoted compared to others. And we also found that the articles that are after they're tweeted, if they're retweeted by other users, they're also more likely to generate more citations, probably because it reflects a higher interest in those articles. And when we look at the type, they generally tend to be retweeted more. The guidelines and meta-analyses are published are the ones that are retweeted more. So what this shows is that maybe using social media to amplify your research is actually a way to help reach more audience and maybe it will have an impact on helping citation as well. What about patient engagement? This is a study that came out of Penn looking at patient use of social media. They surveyed a cohort of eosinophilic esophagitis patients and their social media use. And over 80% of them reported using social media to learn about the EOE condition. And the thing they're most interested in when they use social media is they want to find out latest research, they want to find out about scientific fact of the condition, and also learn about clinical trials. So that's actually one way for patients to learn about where they can enroll in clinical trials as well. Untrustworthy content is reported by them as their main concern. So sometimes they're not sure they can trust certain information on social media, but almost all of them said that if there's physician contribution to the content that they see, they're much more likely to perceive it as being trustworthy. So maybe there's a part for physicians and healthcare providers to play in this to help increase patient awareness and education as well. So having talked about all those, everything else, well, how do we get started, especially for a lot of us who might not be using social media regularly? First of all, you really need to get into communication, marketing, and public relation mindsets. You have to set your goal, like what are you actually trying to accomplish? Choose the right audience for you and choose the right platform. Make sure you have the right branding for what you're trying to accomplish. And also really know your institutional and department policy, because some of them might actually have social media policies as well. Think about engaging on social media and maybe find role models or colleagues that are already using them that can help guide you. And what are some of the potential goals that you can think about for using social media for healthcare professionals? There are 2 different categories. One is personal development, right? Maybe to stay ahead and stay updated, maybe engage in professional discussion with other colleagues and people with the same interests, and also networking. But there are also others too, like to market, to educate patients, to help recruit patients. Maybe there are a lot of physician rating sites out there now. They're run by third parties. You don't really know how they actually run, and somehow they're just scores about you. Well, maybe this is a way to take back the narrative to actually combat those third-party sites. Maybe help boost your institution and department reputation, maybe even humanize what you do on a day-to-day basis. So once you set your goals, then you choose which platform you want to use. Then you have to be familiar with the purpose of each platform, the target audience, and some of the limitations. For example, Twitter tend to have more professionals and colleagues, but they're limited by the number of characters you can use per post. Instagram has a younger audience, and you can also put videos and photos on there, might be useful. Facebook tends to have an older audience, that might be a good platform if you want to target patients specifically. And then LinkedIn tend to be more professional as well. YouTube, TikTok, and those are a little bit harder because you really generate a lot of video, so it might be a little more time consuming. And the next thing you have to do after you choose a platform is branding. How do you set up your own account? Well, first of all, your profile should really convey your professional background, your mission, and your interests. You should choose a profile name that use your professional name and maybe your degree and qualifications. Choose a handle that includes your name and maybe your professional interests, like some examples that I show there. Sometimes people use their subspecialty as their interest. The key thing is to stay professional. This is not with your friends, right? You want to choose something that's professional. Include a brief bio schedule, including your background, both your primary and secondary background. And maybe include a professional profile picture. Maybe sometimes they can let you put a background picture as well, and you can also convey your interest using that. And finally, also link to any professional websites, your own professional profile, maybe online. And then the next thing you think about is maybe start following different people, who you should follow, professional organizations, journals, colleagues and collaborators and thought leaders, and maybe even patient organizations as well. And the next thing is, how do you start creating and consuming content? There are many different types of contents depending on interests and goals. It could be, medical research news or educational contents. It could be promoting an event, or clinical trials or research, maybe live tweeting, like a meeting like this. You can start tweeting about different sessions and talks, health promotion or advocacy, maybe professional achievements. You can start promoting yourself, and also maybe just different elements of your daily life. The other thing you can do is actually engage in online chats. There are a number of different online chats. They're available by GI professionals that you can get involved in, so you can talk about different topics and cases. But there are also potential pitfalls of social media, right? It's not all positive. You have to be very well aware of patient privacy. Think about avoiding giving individualized medical advice to patients. Beware of conflict of interest in sponsored content. There might be professionalism concerns as well. Misinformation could be an issue as well. There could be psychological strain in using a lot of social media all the time. And then safety is also an issue. Just be careful what you post and how much personal information you put out there. With these pitfalls, one of the important ones that we see a lot, especially during COVID, is misinformation, because this is a big issue within public health. And we know the accuracies of medical information in social media significantly vary. And there are a number of factors to consider. The background of the poster and the expertise, maybe any potential conflict of interest of the post, and the sources of information that they're citing are all important to help you determine whether or not something is being accurate. This is a study that we did, that we presented at DDW, where we try to look at Instagram posts on low FODMAP diet. And we try to see, we took a bunch of popular Instagram posts on low FODMAP diet, and we blinded them and showed them to a number of expert dietitians to rate them. And what we found was that there are a lot of them that actually has low usability and understandability and reliability. Specifically those related to recipe. But when they specifically look at posts that are done by a registered dietitian and those that are not an actual qualified dietitian, the one by non-qualified dietitians or if they're non-dietitians are basically have much lower reliability score. So, professional engagement may help improve that. And the important thing is likes and follows don't really equal expertise. You really need to look at the person who's posting the information. This is another study that we published last year. We tried to look at colonoscopy information. We took YouTube videos. We picked YouTube videos that has over 250,000 views, and there are about 69 of them. And we wanted to rate how accurate the information are presented in these YouTube videos about colonoscopy. And what we found was that over 50% of them were rated to have poor reliability or understandability to patients. And when we separate them, about 39 of these 69 videos were created by non-healthcare professionals. It could be celebrities or lay public. And the reliability score was significantly lower amount of videos done by these individuals compared to videos that are created by healthcare professionals. So there really is a role for us to fill to really improve this information, make sure the correct information is given to the patient. I remember when we were going through this, there's one video with well-intentioned by celebrity telling the patients that they should get a colonoscopy screening every year. Well, clearly not the right information, well-intentioned, but we want to make sure that those information are not getting promoted. Patient privacy is also something we need to be aware of. This is a study that actually one of our first-year fellows did, where they look at tweets with endoscopic images and videos. And what they found was that about a third of them, the posters, had at least one tweet that you can categorize as being at risk for non-compliance with confidentiality. And actually, about 18% of all the tweets were at risk. 13 of them actually show the patient's face, which you know is not okay. The vast majority of them were non-compliant because they mentioned a procedure date. And only one of them actually stated they got patient consent. So this is a very important area because in the US, we worry about violation of HIPAA, which is the Private Information Act. And there are a lot of components to what we consider important patient privacy issue, but the ones that are most commonly violated on social media is geographic location and date. Because anything that if anyone sees a post, they can somehow figure out who the patient is, or even the patient himself or herself can figure out that you're talking about them. That could be an issue. So if you post something and say, I did a colonoscopy today and I found this, well, the patient might be able to figure out, well, I got a colonoscopy by you. They'll probably talk about me within that video, right? So you need to be very careful. And the key thing is to actually stay as vague as possible. Think about it like a case report, like writing up a case report. Take out the time or geographic information so you can avoid violating privacy issue. Another one is conflict of interest. So the same study actually looked at conflict of interest. What they found was, to quickly summarize, is that a lot of physicians who actually who receive known payment from manufacturers don't declare this conflict of interest when they post something about using a certain device or medication. So we need to really think about this as an important thing to disclose any financial relationship. What's the standard? We really don't know right now, but really think about it like you're disclosing for a paper or at a talk. And then, the last two slides here, one is research consideration. When we publish paper, now a lot of journals promote using visual abstracts, which is basically a way to convey your information in a clear and graphical way. The main thing if you're going to do this is to minimize text and sentences, use a lot of icons, catchy images that can help summarize and bring out the main results. Don't worry about the secondary analyses and all the details, the methods, just really convey the main results. When you think about research and social media, be aware of copyrights and publication embargo. Make sure to respect the audience, especially when you're tweeting or posting something for a meeting. Make sure that the authors or the speaker is okay with that. And then the last slide here is some other tips to avoid pitfalls. I think we talked about a lot of these already of be aware of patient privacy, be aware of individual advice and things like that. But a few other things, last few tips is that be mindful of who you're following, what posts you like or even interact with, because people can actually see that. So maybe switch to a personal account if you're going to follow celebrity news or like someone's post. Be careful when you approach collaboration, especially when you start having a lot of followers, like some organization individuals may actually approach you to do collaboration. Be very careful of that. Remember, this is your professional image and professional account. When you post something, sit on it first, think about it, reread it before posting, and don't do a quick impulse post. That will help avoid some of these pitfalls. And finally, verify the source of information, like the background of the poster, before you post or retweet something to make sure you're sending the right information. Thank you.